this evening, the Senate will receive the results of the FBI supplemental background investigation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. There'll be plenty of time for members to review and be briefed on the supplemental material before a Friday cloture vote.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announcing on the Senate floor late last night that the FBI has finished its supplemental background check into Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. The report was given to the White House and delivered to Capitol Hill, where it will be reviewed today. The investigation, which is centered around decades-old allegations of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh, is planned to be kept secret. Sources briefed on today's schedule tell NBC News that Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Senator Chuck Grassley will be the first to see the report at 8 a.m., followed by ranking Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein at 9 a.m. The GOP members on the committee will get the report at 10 a.m., and Democrats on the panel can view the report an hour later. Other senators will have access to the report afterwards. McConnell last night arranged for a key vote for Kavanaugh's nomination to be held on Friday. If that vote passes, there will be up to 30 hours of debate, setting up a final confirmation vote on Kavanaugh as early as Saturday. Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah tweeted overnight that the White House is fully confident the Senate will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the White House is defending President Trump after he mocked Kavanaugh accuser Christine Blasey Ford at a rally in Mississippi on Tuesday night. Here first is what the president said Tuesday night, followed by what Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and White House counselor Kellyanne Conway had to say yesterday.
What he's going through, 36 years ago, this happened. I had one beer, right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was, nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember.
The president was stating the facts. Every single word Judge Kavanaugh has said has been picked apart. Every single word, second by second, of his testimony has been picked apart. Yet if anybody says anything about the accusations that have been thrown against them, that's totally off limits and outrageous.
She's been treated like a Fabergé egg by all of us, beginning with me and the president. He's pointing out factual inconsistencies. Do you have corroboration for her claims? Have you found, can you fill in her memory gaps, her factual inconsistencies? That is part of the evidence gathering process in any hunt for truth.
You know, I find it to be flabbergasting. Sarah Huckabee Sanders especially, I sort of discount Kellyanne Conway because she so clearly didn't tell the truth from the get-go. But you had Mitch McConnell, Jeff Flake, Lindsey Graham, Lisa Murkowski. A lot of people said they did not like what the president said when he visibly mocked this woman on stage. If you want to pick apart the details of how this is being treated and exactly what she said and show that there are some discrepancies, show that there are some challenges to her story, that's fair. Yeah. That is absolutely fair. That's why the hearings are being had. That's why, finally, the FBI was able to step in, because there are questions. But when you have this misogynist knowingly mocking her on stage, I really don't understand Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I don't get it. Some would say that you're basically a flack for a misogynist who is a proud predator, who brags about grabbing women by the genitals. As a woman in a powerful position, I'm sorry, you're a complete disappointment. A complete disappointment. There is absolutely no excuse for defending a president for mocking a victim of sexual misconduct, a victim of something, a woman who is suffering. You can't say that's wrong. Yeah. You have been made rotten to the core by this presidency.
So, Willie, it is, as Mika said, it's one thing if you want to question the story as it pertains to Brett Kavanaugh. If you want to say, hey, as the New York Times has said, and as many other news outlets have said all along, that nobody could corroborate her story. And you could talk about the inconsistencies in a calm way to say, well, just as the president said before, I respect Dr. Ford, but I also respect Brett Kavanaugh and don't believe that he did it. There have been many people that have been walking that fine line and being respectful of her. But what we saw here, of course, was the president using as a political punchline the pain and agony that a woman has been enduring for over 3 decades. And that is, as all the Republican senators that spoke yesterday said, that is simply not defensible. And for the women of the White House to defend this misogynist attack is just really, it's beyond
it's pitiful.
It's beyond most Americans' comprehension.
And included in that group of people who did criticize the president's rally in Mississippi were Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Jeff Flake, the 3 people who will determine the fate of this nominee. So clearly it's on their minds. But remember Kellyanne Conway's quote on September 17th, quote, "This woman should not be insulted and she should not be ignored. This woman will be heard," setting the early tone for the White House's reaction to this story, something that Jonathan Lemire, the president, stuck to for a while until he veered wildly from it. But I think what you see there is frustration. They feel like they offered Dr. Ford to come to California. They feel like she's made excuses for not providing information to the committee. They feel, as Kellyanne said, they've treated her well and that she has not given them what they've needed to move this process forward.
Yeah, for weeks now, as you say, the White House, the president's aides, both inside and outside of the West Wing, were saying to him, like, look, don't criticize her. Support Kavanaugh, but don't go after Dr. Ford. Like, there's no upside here. You're just going to alienate perhaps the voterate, particularly the electorate, particularly female voters, and certainly these key senators who are going to determine Kavanaugh's fate. And he listened for a while. There's been a few cracks in that. You know, the tweet from Las Vegas that morning where he called into question her story and made the dig about her parents. You know, since then, he has expressed some frustration when we've heard him talk. But what happened the other night was an eruption. And the reporting that we've done suggests that, you know, it was a frustration about the process, how long that was taking, but in particular 2 other things. That as he was flying down to on Air Force One down to that rally in Mississippi, that he was reading stories, the latest stories about Kavanaugh, the bar fight with the ICE and things of that nature, and he was growing frustrated, thinking this is a good man whose name is being tarnished, but also, and this is not a coincidence, the day that New York Times story ran about his finances, and that he was fuming about that, feeling that that was out of bounds, that was unfair, and he had worked himself into a state when he got to this rally, despite what other aides have been telling him, hey, behave yourself, of course, support your guy, but don't go after her. He couldn't help himself. And what resulted was this display, which a lot of Republicans, as you just said, really felt was counterproductive to their efforts. They were really disappointed in what he said and cast into doubt, you know, Kavanaugh's fate going forward.
And here again, another example of an overreach. We've been talking this morning how some Republican voters feel like the media and the Democrats have overreached. So here is the president doing the exact same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if he continues this line of attack, and if Kellyanne Conway is referring to a woman as a Fabergé egg that's being handled too delicately. Like I said, we've got a long way to the election. You watch, this can swing back the other way. Now, Betsy, the FBI report's going to be released in an hour or 2. We know what's going to happen. The Democrats are going to squawk and say that it's a rigged investigation. The Republicans are going to squawk and say what John Cornyn said, let's just go ahead and vote. This is ridiculous. There's been too much time. At the end of the day, all of the noise, all of the bread and circuses, everything that's going to be surrounding this, we are exactly where we were last week, aren't we? This comes down to Flake. This comes down to Murkowski. This comes down to Collins. And it comes down to a handful of Democrats. Where are they right now?
one thing that we know for sure is that Flake, however he decides to vote, is going to feel like he's gained significant cover because of this FBI investigation. Remember last week when he pulled his stunning switcheroo on the dais of the Senate Judiciary Committee, one thing he made clear in the wake of that movement was that his top priority was preserving public confidence in the process. For him, this was more about the way the Kavanaugh confirmation played out, potentially, than the ultimate results of that confirmation process. Now, I don't think there's been any significant increase in public confidence in the way the United States Senate works because of this FBI investigation. It's been widely viewed as insufficient and as something that's largely a symbolic undertaking. But for Flake, it's something that he'll be able to point to going forward as an accomplishment, as potentially a point that he put on the board, and as him taking a stand to try to defend this institution. Whether it has any impact whatsoever on broader American confidence in the institution very much remains to be seen. But for him, things have changed because this investigation happens. And my understanding is that Murkowski and Collins are kind of thinking the same way. We shouldn't expect to hear anything publicly from them until they've looked at this report. But remember, McConnell wouldn't have filed cloture on the Kavanaugh confirmation vote if he hadn't been fairly confident that things were moving in his direction. So that's significant.
Betsy Woodruff, thank you very much. Still ahead, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is expected to meet with Kim Jong-un once again this weekend in an effort to reinvigorate nuclear talks.
They love each other.
We'll see if it will be like his last visit when the North Korean leader had more pressing business to conduct at a potato farm. Morning Joe will be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.